Donald Trump today in this news conference, yes, touted that investment, but also talked about how all these guys want to be his friend this term when everybody was fighting in his first one.
Yes, this was really sort of one of the key takeaways from this press conference of, he said, look, everyone's to come down. He said, he's having dinner with everybody, essentially. He said all the top executive, all the top bankers are calling him and want to come down and meet with him. And you really see this as sort of a strategy shift. In the first term, people sent their lobbyists, their government affairs team to meet with Trump's government affairs team. That's not how Trump does business. He wants to sit down with the top executive. And a lot of these are stars in and of themselves. Jeff Bezos, Tim Cook, people who are names, and Trump likes to meet with them face to face.
One thing we saw and can remember from the first Trump administration is that we saw a lot of deals promised and yet maybe not fulfilled. Deals also that maybe had already been cut but were repackaged for the then president. Are we seeing a taste of this now? What do we know about this SoftBank deal and how it came together and why they decided to unveil it today?
There's a lot of uncertainty whether SoftBank can really fulfill this. One, they've already made some pledges, so this could be some of that repackaging. But also, if you just look at their bank accounts, they only have about $25 billion cash and cash equivalents on hand right now. That's just a quarter of what they've pledged of this $100 billion. That is over 4 years. But again, there's still a lot of questions of are they actually going to come through and be able to invest this? They pledged this $50 billion in the Trump term. They did spend some of that, but a lot of those were deals that went sour, or for example, WeWork.
I also want to talk about TikTok because Trump was asked about this in the press conference today by our very own Akayla Gardner, whether or not he would stop the ban, which I would remind everyone is set to take effect in January if TikTok doesn't sell its U.S. operation. This was what the president-elect said.
We'll take a look at TikTok. I have a warm spot in my heart for TikTok because I won youth by 34 points. And there are those that say that TikTok had something to do with that.
He did not win the youth vote, we should point out, Mike, but it does seem he's making the point that he knows if TikTok goes away, it might be a problem for young voters. TikTok today asked the Supreme Court to block this ban, but is there anything, considering this was a law passed by both chambers of Congress and signed, that Trump can really do to stop this?
There are ways that he can stop this, but the ban technically takes effect the day before he becomes president, so there would probably be at least some temporary interruption. It doesn't look like any court's going to step in, but there are ways that the president has of executing the law that can help TikTok.
Mike, I wanted to follow up on that because Donald Trump is coming to office with a very hawkish agenda when it comes to China. And he has put into his cabinet 2 people who voted for and really helped to push that legislation through Congress. And I'm talking about his National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, and his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, both of whom identified a national security risk from TikTok. How will he be able to steer them in a different direction, or perhaps vice versa?
Well, I think they've shown a willingness to go along with Trump. Certainly Marco Rubio has. But these questions about China are, views that he shares. He is hawkish on China and does view them as a rival. We don't know how he's going to decide. We know that he's a kind of improvisational leader who does tend to make decisions on the go, listening to both sides and coming down one way. So I wouldn't necessarily predict for sure that he would intervene. He's raised that possibility. It's politically easy for him to dodge this if he wants to just let the bill take effect, because the law does take effect the day before, and he can essentially say his hands are tied, but he does have some leeway as the president.